All right. So, I guess we're going to talk about Turn A Gundam, which is, at least from what I've seen so far, the most comfiest of Gundam.
Yeah,
So
like this is the most like relaxing war in the history of anime. Like, and and it's weird to say that, right? Because in the show, right, there is like fighting and stakes, and people do die. But like, aside from that, like this is very comfy. Like the most low intensity conflict you're ever gonna see in any Gundam show. Like this is one of those wars where you can just like sit back, relax, and watch the pretty explosions in the distance.
it's directed by Tomino, but it's not because sometimes they call him Kill Them All Tomino or something, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
this is
famous kill 'em all endings. My best friend died. Kill 'em all, drain them of blood.
yeah, that's not really a thing here.
It's just
Fuck
a
no.
meme. Okay. Um. Still, so what do you guys so I think Tomino directed this show um like a few years after spending a few years without working on Gundam. I think he worked on some
Yes.
other stuff.
Brain Powered came out right before this. Brain Powered feels like something of a prototype in the for this. Not in terms of like anything concrete, but in terms of like some of the spaceship design is similar. The main character, you've got a lot of the same VAs from Brain Powered coming over to Turn A, including the main heroine in that, who is Sochi Heim in this, and they're almost the same character, except Sochi is more of a brat.
So
Uh,
Yeah, the only thing I remember from Brain Powered is like a scene in the dub where she's like, "Oh my god, he stole my brain."
yeah, the brains are the name of their mechs. Yes.
I've heard that this was supposed to be like the last Gundam show or something, or is that not true?
Yeah, that's supposedly how it goes. That this was meant to be like the last Gundam, or at least this was expected to be. Uh,
Yeah, and you can definitely tell. Like, we'll tackle this further on, but there's a lot of like callbacks to previous Gundam shows. Like, this feels like in a way a bit of like a love letter to Gundam as a franchise, like the Universal Century and shit. Like this entire show does feel like a love letter.
yeah, but at the same time, it's set up in such a way that you do not need to know any of the old Gundams at all.
Yeah, yeah. Like I guess um, so. What happens is that the characters themselves don't know much about the Gundams. So, there will be times when if you have already watched the previous Gundam series, then there will be things that you will know stuff before the characters know. Uh, you
Yeah,
know.
like Turn A Gundam is one of those shows that you can eat. Like one of those Gundam shows, I think you can easily get into. Like the characters don't know any of the shit, and neither do you, so you're learning with them. But like if you're an experienced like Gundam watcher, there's a lot of like Easter eggs and hints of like, oh, I know what that is. Like, oh, okay, I see. There's a lot of moments
Yeah,
like that in the show.
there are characters in there that will go Gundam, and will very much have this history with the Gundams and the shit that they've done in the past, and they're very afraid of them. Which,
Yeah,
by the
look,
way, I
Amuro
don't.
Ray and
I
like
think the word Gundam isn't used until like teens in the episodes, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if I remember correctly, they call the Turn A Gundam like the White Doll. But what I
Yes.
think it's funny about it is just like was fucking like fuck I blanked on the Amuro Ray was like Amuro Ray is such a badass, right, that he's just scarred everyone like genetically, and like everyone's like genetic memory when they automatically see a Gundam, like they're just struck in with fear.
I mean, it seems to be that for whatever reason, Gundams are constantly on the side of the Federation against the good old uh
Space
against
Knights.
space,
Yeah.
against the space noids every time.
So this show is technically in a continuity with previous Gundam shows, but it's so far into the future that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like if I remember reading one interview that says it's in UC, but at the same like the UC time, like it's in the UC universe, but it's so far into the future. It is so far removed from anything that happens in UC, like Unicorn or Victory, that type of shit. Like it is so far removed, but also at the same time, it's in also other universes as well. So it's I'll need to find the article I read this from. Like it was years ago I read this thing, but that's
hmm. I think
like basically how what I've kind of what it kind of the show kind of hints is that basically like they're so far in the future. It's like how we would view like the Roman Empire or Jesus, or even further back, or those weird prehistoric times where there was like multiple countries and technology and giant robots, and these people called new types. Such quaint, archaic definitions are far beyond our enlightened minds.
right, right. So it doesn't really have to make sense. Because I think it's they show stuff. I guess from the UC Gundam, but also from some other stuff as well. But it doesn't really matter because it's been so much into the past. So
Anyways, shall we talk about the opening? Like the actual how it introduces itself and the plot.
sure, go
Yes,
ahead.
it's great.
Yeah, so the intro of this show, we open with a bunch of people on board this mobile suit just coming down to Earth. And when they arrive in this Victorian era. Like, there's no you have like basic aeroplanes, you have artillery, but you don't have you have little cars and gliders, but you don't have anything super advanced yet. And the world itself is like very Victorian in terms of how people live and interact and the general culture. And the three characters that come down from that mobile suit go their separate ways and they start to integrate themselves into Earth life. And they apparently are spying on Earth on the behalf of the moon and the people on the moon who have been living out there for the past 2 to 3 thousand years, waiting for the moment when Earth will once again become habitable, which it, since long ago, has become. After about a year of them sticking around and integrating themselves with the people of Earth, Lauren Sayhawk, the main character in particular, manages to become a butler for for this pretty well-to-do family. And right as he's going through this maturity ceremony, they all of a sudden the people of the moon start to come down. They start to invade, which shocks even their own spies that had come down earlier. And they just start destroying a whole bunch of things in their way. Like giant mobile suits come down, uh, big blasts through city centers, taking down the little tiny airplanes that can't do anything to the big mobile suits. And it is just an absolute shock. And the main government of the area, the Kingdom of Inglesa, does its best to try and hastily make some kind of negotiations with this. And at the same time, Lauren discovers this mobile suit hiding in what was an old statue that was being worshipped. and he decides to take up that mobile suit and reluctantly side with the people of Earth who he's grown attached to, hoping that by aiding them, it'll lead to some sort of peace between the two sides. And that's the general intro.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about that intro is literally like the moon people just show up and they just start blasting. Like they just show up. There's not even like what I find really interesting about that thing, right, is they just show up as like, oh, they're not supposed to be here. Continue bombardment and blasting. We'll show these savages. And then what I actually really like about and what I really like about is when they find the Turn A Gundam. And like you see this like big statue, right? It's like, oh, that looks pretty cool, this mountain statue. And you find out like, no, underneath it is a fucking mobile suit, like this hyper advanced like mobile suit. And it's like, and then like my favorite scene, right, is when he shoots the beam cannon off, and it barely hits like the other mobile suit, and the pilot and there's like, wait, what the fuck? That's a laser attack. What they're not supposed to have these. These are savage barbarians. Like they shouldn't have they shouldn't have laser guns and shit. And it's just like all this chaotic shit goes on. Um, I think what's really interesting about like the invasion scene, right, is like they only send like I think one or two suits, right, to like attack the town because like, oh yeah, this is no threat, right? Typical military shit, like, oh, we're professionals, we're trained. They show up, they see a laser gun getting shot at them, and they're freaking the fuck out. They're like, what the fuck? Um,
Well, that's also. The, I was gonna say the the thing is like the military people that come down from the moon, they call themselves the Counter. They're basically shocked that the humans would even think to fight back, as hopelessly
yes.
outmatched as they are. And they're constantly having these talks of like, the hell are these people doing? Are these people insane? Are they? These must be crazy barbarians to try and like fight us like this. What's with these people? No, it's because there's explicitly a taboo about them ever moving out of orbit.
I mean, Laura can also work because that's his alter ego, as he like subverts both the Earth and the Moon culture at once.
Lauren and Laura, yes, Gwen Reinford has his own issues that we'll talk about later.
I mean, let's talk about like I think it's the second or third episode where like the Moon people saying like, "Oh, why are you guys fighting? This is our planet," and shit like that. Like, there's a lot of like presumptuousness about like the invasion itself. Like, they just invade, right? It's like, oh, why are these people fighting us? It's like, and the people on Earth are like, what the fuck are you people doing? Like, we're having this nice little, heretical pagan shit right now, and then you guys invade with giant robots and start blasting. It's like, what the fuck are you people doing? Stop!
Yes, Gu- the Prince of Inglesa is named Gwen Reinford. He is something of a Machiavellian character. He's someone who's constantly wheeling and dealing. He's
Oh,
open to
fuck yeah.
peace. He's open to peace, but he's an industrialist. He's constantly thinking about how to further push along technology and growth in his country. And he's been in secret contact over radio wave with the people on the moon for about a year or so, and then all of a sudden they just declared to him, "Oh yeah, we're coming down," and he's as shocked as any of them, and he's just scrambling to make something work to try and
Yeah, like
stop.
especially if he has like a potential war in his hands against an enemy that that out like that basically like is bit like that they're against an enemy that is way more technologically advanced than he is, right? And that's the thing that Machiavelli prescribes to. War cannot be cannot be prevented, but it can be postponed to the benefit of others.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
it
actually specifically a thing he does in the show.
yes, and it should also be mentioned that in like the opening salvos of this war, the Heim family that Lauren works for and becomes quite close with, they lose their father, who dies in some of the laser fire on the city, but which is a big deal for the younger sister Sochiheim, who is completely torn up about it. She's something of a bratty and feisty girl, and she just ends up joining the newly formed militia as a result of this. Is basically a way to get revenge. Yes, yes. Kielheim. No, Kielheim is simply Gwen Ford's secretary, and we'll get to. She's very stoic. No, stoic's not entirely the right word, but she's very formal, proper. She's more than capable of being warm and comforting in the right scenario. Uh, and we'll get to her as we talk about Diana Sorrel. I've always like it's spelled Soil. They sort of say Sorel. You could pronounce it whichever way you want. Uh, Yeah. Anyway, Deanna Sorrel. Yeah. Okay. Deanna Sorrel comes down to Earth, like in the middle of all this. Uh and basically she tries to put an immediate end to all this fighting. This was explicitly against her intent. This was explicitly the militia doing their own nonsense. Um, and they do make a big point about how spellbounding she is from the start. Even like her
Yeah,
theoretical
there's kind of like there is a bit of like this kind of fey like elf kind of like aura to her. Like when she shows up, it's almost like she's like some fey fairy, or like she's almost like some like fey fairy from the moon or something like that. Like she does have this kind of aura about her.
yes. I don't know. They might have not have. Yeah, I think they came down with.
Mobile suits out of the ground. Yeah, no, also what I really like about the show, right, is that there's a lot of fuckery going on behind the scenes, like subordinates doing shit behind their leaders' backs,
Oh
random like
yes,
counter-terrorism factions. What I think is really interesting about the show, and I think it's a bit nuanced, right, is that like in regular Gundam shows, it's like, oh, the bad faction does bad things, kill them all. But in this show, it's like there is good people and bad people in both factions, and sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and etc. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and instead of going to complete total war, kill them all, the show takes the attitude of like, look, these are clearly bad eggs, these are clearly bad apples. Let's try and calm things down before we get into like total war.
Well, it's not even entirely the idea that they are bad apples. It's sort of an understanding that these are militaries and that these are what militaries do. They wish, the normal rank and file soldier, oftentimes, like, it is restless. They don't want to sit around doing nothing.
Yeah, they're like
Uh,
ready for action.
yeah, and if there's absolutely no progress on things at all, and they have a lot of grudges, and they also see how their advantageous position is slowly slipping away, they might just start making excuses, and they might just start a battle here or there. It especially doesn't help when someone like Gwen Ryan Ford engages in one underhanded operation to try and win the trust of Queen Diana. But then, as a result, that becomes an excuse for the militia to basically do the same thing again
Yeah.
without orders.
Yeah, like that's kind of the interesting thing about the show. Like, there's just like a lot of like internal politicking and stuff, and that's actually what I quite like about it, and that's what I feel. Not that it was like missing in other Gundam shows, but like I think in some Gundam shows it was less of a focus, or like um, there was a lot less like, oh yeah, these people like, how do I explain it? Like in quite a few Gundam shows, like it all feels like everyone's following orders. And in this show, it's like some of these people are doing shit on their own, behind the scenes, without orders and shit. And I thought that was it is a bit more interesting.
Hmm.
It existed, but it was more like kind of like a deterrent than like an actual like fighting force anything. It's like, oh yeah, we've got a bunch of cannons and guns. Don't fuck our shit up. Like it's, the
Yeah,
militia I thought was more of a deterrent force than like an actual like militia.
yeah. It is directly stated early on that Gwen has been upsizing it on the excuse that supposedly people from the European continent might invade, when in reality, he's known for a while that the moon people are going to come down at some point, so he's been making plans for when that does happen. He, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's just been like preparing for this moment for a while. It just came a lot sooner than he expected.
Yeah,
Nor
like you
did he.
you you kind of get the impression like if he had another like year or two to like dig up more mobile suits and this kind of technology, you think that he probably would be ready, but he's like, fuck. He's like, they
Well,
show up and like, fuck. We don't have
well,
mobile suits. Shit.
well, they also don't know that the mobile suits exist at all until in the mountains, until Lauren just discovers one. Although I guess they were doing some amount of digging
Yeah,
and
like they
stuff.
they they may have stumbled upon one like eventually, but like you get the impression, right, is that like if he had a few more years, they would definitely like the militia would definitely be a bit more of a not like a bit more of an even playing field if like the moon people came to invade. I mean, they're still like are horribly outgunned, right? But you know, if they can hold out long enough, I mean, it's going to be a pretty brutal defensive war. But if they can hold out long enough, eventually the moon people will just fuck off and leave.
Yeah, and that is sort of what causes a lot of the military forces of Diana Counter to get very antsy. They notice that Diana loves talking peace. She doesn't seem to commit to anything hard with Gwen Rhineford, and Gwen Rhineford is trying to string out the negotiations, bar none. He is attempting to to extract every possible concession from the Moon people possible. Although he does still full well intend to surrender the Sunbelt region of North America, as they call it, uh, in exchange for concessions. Uh, it seems to be roughly the Midwest. Louisiana is obviously Louisiana. Um, Inglesa is somewhere on the East Coast because the capital of Inglesa is Bostonia Castle. So, I mean, three guesses where that is.
Is America.
Yes.
I mean, I think they go to like Mexico or something like down like South America at some point in the show as well. So
Yes, they do travel to yes, what's essentially a Mayan style people, although they're a lot more they're Mayan influence, but I'd say they're not exactly doing the human sacrifice thing.
no, they're not trying to feed the sun god. Yeah, and what is interesting, right, is that you also get the impression in the show, because they mentioned Europe, is that you get the impression there are other like enclaves of humanity and other kingdoms just slowly like rising up from the ashes. So, actually, did we ever go to Europe? I don't think we ever went to Europe or other countries in the show. I
No.
think it's mostly just America and like South America that we go. So yeah, um,
Yeah, it's the
pretty.
Americas entirely.
Yep.
Well, yes,
Ah,
because they'd say that because this is a area that has not had the chance, like civilization got rebuilt in the Americas by like the same people that lived there. There were no Native Americans or anything like that. This is whatever the mixed peoples of the Americas were at the time of uh like the end of the World Federation grew up and built up uh the Americas. And so you have this very Victorian era and Victorian in styling, yes, Victorian England, uh,
I mean, I
s
would say in like aesthetics and
civilization.
stuff, like yeah, like I would say in style and aesthetics, yeah, they're Victorians, but in terms of like spirit and attitude, like there's a lot of like Americanisms, and by I mean Americanisms, like a lot of the more classical, like the kind of like the Pilgrim, 1700s, 1800s kind of like Americanisms about them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, and
I mean,
originally,
the
like originally,
helmets make me think of Prussia personally,
yeah,
but
but even though like technologically wise, these guys are more Victorian, like maybe early 1900s, late 1800s to early 1900s. I would say like a bit like culturally, there's still quite a few like Americanisms about them, which makes sense because it's what they passed down. It's what the survivors passed down from whatever was left of the ashes, so it makes sense. Um, I mean, the American Army was originally like a militia. Like the actual like American Army proper was originally a militia, and a lot of them had like former commanders that fought in the British Army. They had German commanders, they had French commanders, all this type of like actual commanders. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense if you think about it. If you think about like the history.
no. No, I
No,
really wouldn't.
it's
Like,
not gritty enough. It doesn't have like the kind of edginess that some like a lot of cyberpunk shows. And by
it's
like
not
edginess,
steampunk, for one.
no.
There's no steam-powered things everywhere, for one.
Yeah, most things seem to be like electric powered or pumped or something like that. Like yeah, like this is just a really weird setting. Like it's one of
Yeah.
those settings where it's just like um it's not even post-apocalypse.
No.
It's more like society is just like like it's basically like like society's basically had a restart, and like eventually people are building back to what they knew and shit.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, maybe there are like cities, but we don't get to see them.
Well.
This kingdom kind of comes off as like, bit of a like a rural backwater. Really, like there's a few towns and villages and stuff like that. Like, oh, there's a nice little city over there, little nice little town, but it doesn't have like you're not going to see like the mega cities or anything like that. And
No.
that's assuming that like there's mega cities around or people have the resources to build that shit. Yeah, basically, moon people the moon people sign their invasion, and like the Machiavellian dude is Machiavellian. Um, we talked a little bit about like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and etc. Um, what else what could we discuss? Yeah, like some of the episodes of the show are kind of a blur to me because like this show is like really comfy, in both a good and a bad way. Like, it's like but I mean, like the show's boring. Like, it doesn't mean like I don't like it or enjoy it. It's just like the show, like it all blends into me, right? Like all the episodes kind of like blend into each other for me because it is so fucking comfy and very low stakes and very like relaxing and sleep inducing. Yes. Yeah, like a lot of the same circumstances happen over again. Like the only thing that really changes it up is that when people die, when like the occasional character and shit dies. I think we should talk a little bit about the plot first. We want to wait till like Hercules gets in. When it comes to like the moon people, uh, they remind me a little bit the way they're portrayed. They like at the beginning, right? They kind of remind me a little bit of like if you ever read like the Moon Priestess story from like Japanese folklore. Like they kind of remind me of that. Like at the beginning, they're kind of like these Fae-like people, right? They're very mysterious and Fae-like and kind of like a bit freaky deaky, right? And then once you get to know them, that kind of mysterious aura kind of disappears, and you learn a bit more about like their culture and shit. Yeah, like the only difference is that like they just have more advanced technology and they can't go outside because gravity and shit. But it's like it's just like the moon to me is like a little colony of what like it reminds me of like a little colony that's just like, oh yeah, we have this little colony on Earth, and then when like society blew up and shit, they kind of like, well fuck, we're stuck here. Like they kind of had to make the best of it. Yeah, the moon people. Yeah, it's mostly like you get the impression, right, that the moon people, like, if they don't move to Earth, they're kind of fucked because it's like with those cryogenic tubes and shit. Like, imagine how much power it requires to use power those damn things and shit. Like,
Yeah.
you get the impression, right, that like they have to move at some point because they don't, they're gonna reach a crisis point, and like they're like, well, Earth's got plenty of space, right? Like, there's plenty of room we can live.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of people have literally gone into suspended animation waiting for this day, waiting for the time that they will come to Earth. Uh, I,
Yeah, and it's like from their perspective, right? It's like, oh, well, Earth is like what, 5, 10 times bigger than the moon. Like, there's plenty of space, just we could just, oh, there's a nice plot of land over there. I'm gonna live there and start a family. As far as like the moon people are concerned, and this is their perspective, is that like, oh, the Earth people being selfish, they don't want to share these wide open plains and shit.
and from the perspective of Earth, it's like, this is our land, you weird aliens that keep calling us savages. Yeah, yeah. Once
Yeah, there's
they
there's quite a bit
do,
of like blood and soil that goes into the narrative, and like it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, it's like, yeah, my like I think there was an episode, right, where you had this old lady, right, and she didn't want to leave her property because like, her great grandmother built this farm, and it was built on the backs on her grandfather and shit like that, and there's a lot of there's also a lot of emphasis on like the community here, on the community as well, like this communal living aspect as well.
Mhm.
And like the moon people showing up, right? These moon invaders, right? They don't even really make a at the beginning, right? They don't really make the attempt to integrate in the community. They just kind of like show up
Mhm.
and presume that they're owed this land. Like they presume that they can have this, and like the Earth people are like, "What the fuck are you people doing? Like, get off my lawn!"
There's definitely more people on Earth. That's definitely the impression you get. Total, total.
And you probably get the impression that that's like maybe the only city they have, and maybe a small other outpost. But you get the impression that like there's not many of these guys.
Mhm. I guess we were sort of starting to talk about how the plot really starts to kick in. There's two defining moments. Well, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the aesthetics and the appeal of the characters, and how the show in general has this. comfy feel, a very agrarian feel to it, and
Student. Technical difficulties. People can't hear us on the stream. Yeah, Fahrenheit did. Let me just go
Okay.
check. See if we.
How about now? I think it should work now.
Okay. Yeah, let me just double check. I'm gonna deafen myself, so you guys keep talking.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, as I was saying, on you have a very sort of agrarian style feel to a lot of things. There's a lot of appreciation for just like simple things. You see certain characters go through very low level stuff. Like stuff like farming. All these moon people have to go through farming or basic medical tent style stuff
Okay, so
of the
I just
era.
yeah, I just checked the audio. So there's like a segment of where like our audio goes deafened, but like we've got most of the recording so far. So all right, so we're good on that front.
Okay. Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
Around episode 7 or so, 6 or 7 is when we get to see Queen Diana. She gets to talk like get up close with Gwen, and she gets to get up close with Guy Helheim. And for basically no particular plot explanation, Queen Diana and Kihel, they look nearly identical. They have the same voice actress. Uh,
Is
and
it
of
one of
course,
those gender swap things where like one's a man, one's a woman?
No,
no, they're both women.
Okay.
They're both women.
we're about to get to the gender swap stuff though, so don't worry about it. We're about to get into the
Great.
subversion stuff shortly.
Great.
No, yeah, what? So as a result, they sort of make tea with one another. And Queen Diana is very similar to Kihel. She's very proper, obviously. She's magnanimous. She's awe-inspiring. You're right. She has this sort of elf-like feeling to her. But at the same time, she's also very repressed. She feel the burdens of being queen and going through cycles of suspended hibernation, then waking up to find no one she knows is around or alive, and then going back into suspended hibernation have taken
Yeah,
a
like that
toll
was
on.
actually an episode I actually quite liked. Like she remember meeting this farmer, and then she goes back, and he's like dead, and she meets like I think his granddaughter or great granddaughter or something like that.
Yeah, great
I thought that
grandson.
was great grandson. Yeah, and I was just kind of like, wow, that's actually kind of tragic. That's actually kind of sad.
Oh, it's
Yeah, it
completely
kind of adds to like the kind of elf fae like appeal, right? Like she's almost like timeless in a way.
yes. So she, uh, as she and Kihel are in the middle of just like trying on each other's clothes,
Yeah,
uh,
they're
they
basically sisters at this point.
yeah, they all of a sudden decide to come in. All of a sudden, the official people start knock on their door, and Deanna thinks it would be a lark if they start like impersonating one another just for the day. Like Kihel will be Deanna, Deanna will be Kihel. And they decide to do this. There's an episode where this goes on, and there's a very nice scene where Deanna, as Kihel, pretending to be Kihel, completely breaks down at Kihel's tombstone for their father, and it's a very nice emotional moment. And then we cut to the end of the episode, and then by the next episode, Kihel and Deanna have gone their separate ways, and they haven't swapped identities yet. Why? There is no explanation.
Very strange.
Listen, they just did it for fun. It's like, oh, I get to be queen of the moon, and you get to be like an heiress to a kingdom. You know, swap roles will be fun.
Yeah, and both of them are. Yeah, both of them are against this. Both of them don't particularly want this and immediately start thinking about how can we like undo this, but the plot needs this to happen. It needs Kihel, it needs Diana to be able to interact with all the people of Earth, and it needs Kihel to be able to start to understand the moon race and Diana. So fuck it. Rape of Logic makes for a great plot device.
I didn't expect that like it would last. I thought that like they would just switch for one episode. Yeah, but it does last quite a while and become an important part of.
Yeah, it's like fucking twin sisters. Like they're just continuously swapping.
And I don't think I expected some kind of explanation as to why they look so similar, but it's not explained. They just do.
I don't know, random luck of genetics, I guess.
Yeah.
It seems like a Japanese thing.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not familiar enough with the culture to say, but you're probably right.
Reminded me a bit of the Prince and the Pauper thing.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that old story.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously it's not the same.
I should also mention, it's also around then, like a few episodes later. This is the other major plot hole in this show, and these are the only two major plot holes, but they are kind of bothersome. There's that one with Diana and Kihel, and then there's this one where there's like just another very standard breakout of fighting between the people of between the militia and Diana Counter, and it's sort of like so slowly stopped. But then all of a sudden, Gwen Rhineford gets told by like everyone that apparently overnight everyone has suddenly lost faith in his government, and his money is now worthless, and his government is a failed state, with simply because. And there's no hard reason as to why this would happen now, or why, or who on earth would really take over in this case. I mean, it seems
yeah,
like
because
afterwards.
like this is his kingdom, right? Like if he's deposed, that caused the well, listen, class, that caused a thing which is called a power vacuum. And does anyone want to guess what happens in a power vacuum, kids? Does anyone want to guess?
Anarchy.
Yep.
Gangs.
So I mean,
Warlords.
but didn't this happen because the entire town was destroyed? The town of Nikos or whatever it's called.
Noxus.
Noxus,
A
yeah.
lot. To be fair, yes, a lot of Noxus is destroyed.
You
How
guys
does
are
that
roboting
cause
me.
How does that cause the downfall of a kingdom, though?
I don't think it's
Yeah.
very large, though. I don't think it like. I think it's the capital or something as well, right?
It is
like-
it is the capital, yes, but still.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's enough destruction to really bankrupt an entire kingdom like of this.
Nor is it like fucking leveled or anything. It's just like, oh, the city was already 1/4 destroyed. It's like 1/4 more destroyed, and I guess you could say that might lead to a mass exodus from Noxus, but
It's like someone bombing the White House and then the president going, "Oh, I'm defeated."
Yeah,
well,
he does try to
yeah,
run away.
yeah, it's not even that Gwen is like Gwen wants to keep ruling things. It's just like apparently sudden lack of confidence. Apparently sudden like everyone's taking their money out of the bank or his paper money.
Oh no, bank runs! Bank runs! The downfall of many a country.
Yeah, I mean that sort of makes sense. It's like maybe it's all properly explained, but it's like so.
Yeah, I didn't really see an explanation. And it's like, okay, if no one has confidence in him, who the fuck is actually in charge then? Like,
yeah,
like if that was happening, you'd expect like another guy behind the shadows, like, aha, it was me all the time. Bang! I'm the king now.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I think it was just for a dramatic scene.
Yeah, and by the way, these aren't even like battles. These are like random skirmishes in the fucking woods. Like sometimes it's just like a random mech and a truck and a cannon. Like these aren't even like we can't even call them battles. These are more like minor skirmishes, if anything else.
Yeah, it's actually fairly
Low
uncommon
intensity.
for people to die in these skirmishes. Yeah,
Um, yeah.
now, like, narratively, this is supposed to be happening because, like, when Reinford was like basically waiting too long in the negotiations and was trying to peel out everything he could from Deanna Counter. And that this is sort of his price for getting too greedy. That's like explicitly what's supposed to be going on here, but it's like basically not properly justified, and I think especially so because like uh, as long as Deanna or Kihel has some amount of power, she's not going to let them completely take over. Let the military just Deanna Counter just do whatever the hell they want.
I think that they didn't keep like also uh, sell his flat mech or whatever. Uh, uh, and then he got some money from militia, and I think that money also becomes worthless as
Yes, instantly worthless. Yeah, it's sort of a step back. That's one of the nice things about the show is you've got uh the three main. It has a very wide cast overall, and all of them, like, there are easily a dozen characters in this show that have some kind of arc or development to them. Keith in particular was one of the characters that came down with Lauren, and he's like Lauren, he's more like completely pissed off about the whole situation, about how Deanna Counter is treating things. They're all like all shocked that Deanna Counter, etc., would ever act like this. It's just wild to them. And so as a result, uh, he uh, he really throws himself into baking bread and becoming an apprentice bread maker. Eventually, he opens his own shop. For a while, he can't do anything. He can't find any business. But eventually, by like sheer chance and happenstance, while riding out and selling his bread like on a bicycle,
Is this the
he
King of the Kingdom you're talking about?
no, I'm talking about a random motherfucker named
Okay,
Keith who was a Moonray spy a year ago, and has
Yeah,
since
now he's baking
invaded
bread.
Earth life.
got it.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
And
gone
there's like
native.
this much, and there's this much detail on him. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I was like, well, this is strange. Okay,
yeah. I mean, I think like he's even able to like have his own little neutral territory where he's able to sell bread to both sides.
yeah. He gets his big break just by selling it to one Moonrace guy who goes, "Hey, this is pretty good. I'll buy your whole. We're kind of
Yeah,
short
more
on
please.
supplies.
More.
Yeah, we're short on supplies. You know. We'll gladly buy this.
Yeah, and there's an interesting scene when some people from militia side, I think Lauren was also there, confront him about this and like ask him like, how can you be selling bread to both sides, or rather to the other side? Don't you have any shame? Um, or something like that. And I think he had a good answer back, but I can't remember it, if you guys can remember it. Can you remember that scene?
No.
No. Okay, I'm the only one who remembers it. Um, yeah, I think he basically just says that um,
if I watched it, I would have remembered it soon.
yeah,
I
yeah,
guarantee it.
yeah. I think yeah, I think it was with Lauren, and like he basically says that he's selling it to both sides because that's the only way that he can help people or something. that he at least he doesn't do any harm to anyone with that. And then, given that we are talking about the characters, the spies, quote unquote spies, teenagers who came from the moon. So there's the protagonist, Lauren. There's Keith, the baker, and I think that there's one more, Fran. I think she was called, and she becomes a journalist. Um, and I think the most interesting scene with her happens where, like in a town, which is being attacked by the Diana counter people, and people are running away, and she's trying to take pictures of the disaster which is happening. But yeah, she basically ends up getting in the way while she's taking photograph from somebody who's trying to run away, and he's like, what are you doing? And she explains that she's taking pictures for the papers, and this random man who is running away from the town tells her that uh, there's no point because the pictures won't get published in the papers anyway,
Oh
because
yeah, I remember that scene. Also, by the way, student, you're like roboting hard for me.
am I?
Yeah, a little bit.
He sounds okay to me.
Yeah, it sounds fine-ish to me.
Okay.
All right, I'll try and connect. I'll try and plug back in. It's been raining outside, so continue.
Yeah. And the reason why those pictures won't get published in the papers is because
Yeah, there are no papers.
no, it's not because of that. I think the man explains says that it's like the Louisiana people, um, with the government basically will not publish these pictures, and I think the implication is that they won't publish them because they don't want to show pictures of like the militia losing.
Well, in this case, it was like Deanna. If you're the scene, I think you're remembering, it was actually the Deanna counterforces that were sort of pushing people around and openly stealing from them because they were low on supplies.
Yeah, but the reason why that yeah, but they were still beating out the militia, and obviously the militia doesn't want to be shown as weak, essentially, in the press. I think that was the point, but I'm the only one who remembers that scene. Um, other than that, I don't think that there's much else to Fran's character. I guess she starts. She has a relationship with one of the militia men, and has a baby at the end, and that's about it for her character.
Her character arc is motherhood.
I guess so.
No, she has a. To be honest, I'm blanking out, but yeah, she does have a brief character arc in the middle of things.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think it's just those three who came from space. So earlier you were talking about how like they were angry at Diana for what she has done, Princess Diana, Queen Diana, or whatever. Um, and I and Lauren or Laura, whatever. We'll talk about that in a minute. The protagonist.
His
Yeah.
his name is Lauren, which he makes very clear at one of the last episodes.
Yeah, sure.
Like Hermione or what? Like he tells you how to pronounce it, or like what's the story behind that?
No. Okay, so let's back up a bit in terms of that. Or I guess we could like jump ahead slash. Okay, when Gwen Rhineford for whatever reason, when Gwen Rhineford first sees Lauren, he just randomly refers to him as Laura, and everyone goes like, wait, did he just? And they just sort of ignore it. It's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, that's kind of weird. And then, as part of like the delegations and whatnot, they has him dress up as like this Laura Lola character. And it's like, yeah, okay, so I guess he thinks that pretending to be a female pilot will be like better for the propaganda efforts or something like that. I mean, that's kind of weird.
That's
Uh,
Yeah,
That's
mm,
very
the
Japanese.
protagonist, the protagonist is a bit like slightly effeminate, but it's just like, okay, why are they cross dressing as a girl, right? Like, I remember the scene where it's like, oh, we're gonna teach you how to be a proper lady. I'm like, and I think to myself like, oh, that's
Like
a bit
geisha
odd,
or
right?
something.
That's a bit peculiar. It's
yeah, and we'll talk more on that at the very, very
Sounds
end.
good.
I think
it's very subtle foreshadowing.
yeah I think it's sort of implied that it's kind of a meta reason, but that if he had not dressed up as a woman, then Diana would have recognized him as one of the Moonrace people, or maybe that because and not just Diana, because at the same time Lauren was in contact with with the Moonrace.
Diana Counter, yes.
Yeah, Diana Counter,
The one.
and yeah, and but at the same time, at this point, Gwyn and the others didn't know.
Yeah,
Did
Gwen. I
yeah?
didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gwen, by the way, is very good at reading people, and like he immediately notices about Lauren that he makes this offhand comment, which is quite true. That uh, the funny thing about Lauren is he's completely honest and forthright in the way he acts, in order to hide the fact that he's got a big secret. Which is exactly the case. Lauren is hiding the fact that he is from the moon. He is of the moon race, which is a special problem for Sochi Heim, who's had like a crush on Lauren since like near day one. Um, but she's also uh completely hates the moon race. She hates them for killing her father, destroying everything. Uh, and so she, in particular, is thrown for a complete loop in one of the.
So she's a moon racist, but she's justified.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, I think I believe that yeah.
Yeah, she in particular is thrown for a loop when Lauren, in the middle of like the there's like this recrimination between the moon race and this one moon race farmer, I believe, who's like trying to just live his life, and all these like angry mob, and Lauren at this point just blows up and completely falls apart and lets everyone know that he's originally of the moon race. And of course, it becomes sort of a big deal in terms of. And Sochi feels very, very, very betrayed. And that leads to something of a gulf between those characters for a little bit.
Yeah, I think it sort of fits itself. But yeah, it sort of fits itself with time, because basically Lauren ends up paired mostly with Diana, who is now um, uh, pretending to be Soshi's sister, which what's her name again? Kill,
He
kill,
hell high. He
yeah,
hell high.
Keyhell,
Yeah.
and basically when when after meeting the queen and realizing that she can't tell the queen apart from her own sister, I think Sochi is no longer a moon racist or whatever. Uh,
No. You missed the big point, which is a point of change for Sochi, which we'll get to that.
I see.
Uh,
Okay. Um. Yeah. So yeah. So while she's cross-dressed, Lauren confronts Queen Diana. But um, yeah, that doesn't go anywhere either because it gets interrupted by some assassins or whatever, who are basically
mm,
some moon race people pretending to be militia.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. After Kihel goes, after after the Kihel Diana switch happens, Lorne ends up just sort of escorting what he doesn't realize is Queen Diana around. They bump into, as we've talked about, the ancient, like the great grandson of Mr. Wilgame, and Diana is like completely torn up about this. Uh, she like completely breaks down. She's so happy to see him. At first she thinks that this is like the actual will game, and then she has to like play it off as just, oh, this is a startling resemblance to someone I used to know once, but really he's like his great grandson.
And is he escorting her around in a Gundam?
Mostly on foot, but the Gundam's coming around with them.
Okay.
So yeah, and so in the middle, there's like a few episode, and there's like a whole episode arc where Will Game tries to there's this old he tries to ingratiate himself with Deanna Counter and make this sort of like deal, I think partially also to renovate the big crashed mobile suit that his like great grandfather started working on and was never completed, big spaceship. And he ends
That
up
sounds
being
really
like,
cool.
yeah, and he basically ends up being rather naive about this, taking advantage of, gets into Deanna Counter and ends up dying kind of horribly, like just smashed in the cockpit. There's also the matter, you're right, we start to bump into these theoretical assassins who seem to want Queen Diana dead for some reason. And there's been all these supply issues for the Deanna counter forces as well. And you start to get a feeling, wait, there's something going on here. The people of the moon don't seem to be cooperating with their leader at all. There seem to be power players back on the moon that are trying to put a kibosh on things and kill Diana. Uh, the real Diana, in particular, is nearly assassinated.
So the moon is manipulating stuff behind the scenes to on Earth in order
Yes,
to stop stuff from going forward.
yes,
That's crazy.
yes,
That
yes.
is some deep state shit.
Oh, it is purely deep state shit. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, like not even their queen can get away from like political intrigue. Like it's wild.
Yeah, there's this fucking prime minister in the background named like Agrippa Maintainer, and you like hear about him, but you don't see him until like episode 40, even though you see him in like episode hear about him in like episode 14 or 16 or something like that. Um, you have these Yeah, Queen Diana herself is like nearly assassinated by one of these assassins who's like trying to make her way up in the world because she's like a former Earth resident that came to the moon many
See, we got
generations
strong
ago.
whammon right here. Strong whammon assassin.
Yes, a strong whammon.
I like
Yeah,
it. I love it.
yeah. She tries to get onto. Yeah, basically, she's doing this whole thing because she wants to get a high noble position in Moon Society. Her family's
And she
been
does this by assassinating people.
Yes.
yes, she's been given a deal. Mind you, I think it's most likely that she'd probably just be disposed of after this, but who knows?
Yeah, that's
We
some
never
deal.
know.
That's some deal.
We don't get to see because she dies in the process of
Oh,
it.
disappointing. Disappointing.
It it's
Yeah.
actually like the most insane shot.
Unstrong
It,
whammon.
it's like the most insane shot ever. Like Lauren discovers what this Teteth woman's all about, throws her to the ground, and in the middle of throwing her to the ground, her contact, which increasingly sees her as a liability, shoots her in the head in the middle of her getting thrown to the ground. It's
These
like
moon people seem pretty brutal.
And
yeah,
then they call the Earth people savages. Ironic.
Yeah, they seem pretty crazy, man. Shooting their own kind all the time.
To be fair, I think they say that the assassin's motivation was that she was basically treated as a second class citizen on the moon, so she hated
yes.
Yeah,
the
wasn't she like a second class citizen because she had Earth blood in her?
Yeah, it's not
Oh, a
anything
half breed. A half breed.
yeah, it's not anything formalized or anything like that. It's just generally people from Earth are sort of looked down upon as like different and somewhat savage and not as civilized. And so
Do they
as a
have super strength on the moon since the moon is lower gravity?
you think that, but it never really comes up. No.
Damn. Because in the first
They
episode, they were doing the like he's doing the gravity, you know, like he tries to bow and he falls over.
yeah, that's sort of something that's like n- just sort of like glossed over. They do talk about how it's like 1/6 gravity on the moon when they get to the moon, but like for I guess you could say narrative reasons, they never get into like
Yeah,
the fact that
darn.
everyone's like should be like super weak or whatever,
Okay,
or like
continue.
just falling over.
so
I guess it wouldn't work for the story.
I guess it's sort of explained why it is that the queen really is not in charge is because she was hibernating for a long time. And
Yeah,
yeah,
she's very much a pharaoh style king where she is so like revered and loved and
It's
everything.
like the
Messiah
emperor from
complex.
Japan. It's like the emperor from Japan, right? Like
Yes,
descended from
back
Amaterasu and that.
back when the emperor, and we're talking like the old system with the emperor. Well, yeah, yes, theoretically, the emperor is sovereign and has absolute power and can do what he or she wants. However, it is most improper for the emperor to get involved in small affairs and really and she doesn't have the time to look for over everything, especially when she's hibernating for so long. And therefore so yeah, a lot of the government runs itself and a lot of the government kind of does whatever the fuck it wants.
yeah, but it's kind of weird because it's implied that also like people like Agrippa maintainer have been in cryogenic sleep for thousands of years. Because they have also been around for thousands of years. So yeah, how could they do that? I mean, if they were also
Uh,
in cryogenic sleep.
there's various people that are in that's yeah, it's not entirely clear how often some of these people are in and out or how people run. I'm sure there's various other people who run things in between.
And another thing which was a bit odd, but I didn't think too hard about, was that the people on the Earth and the Moon seem to speak the same language, even though
Yeah,
there's
very convenient.
yeah,
Very convenient.
like I think they say that there's been minimal contact during the last 2000 or whatever years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone speaks perfect Japanese.
Um,
Or what?
whatever, or English, or whatever it is that they
That's
speak.
such a trope, though. That's done in everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because otherwise, it's just like fucking hard.
Yeah, Star Trek
story.
would be everyone, with wambly goo mouths,
Star Trek has like an excuse of like theoretically everyone's wearing like microscopic translators.
Yeah, but their mouths would be out of sync, bro. Their mouths would be out of sync.
Yeah, they totally would.
I believe that there's also one character who is who has been in cryogenic sleep for so long that he's from the dark history or whatever.
Yes, Coronander.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the cryogenic sleep that made him go insane, but maybe partly.
Yes, it is.
You think
Yes,
it is? Yeah.
Yeah, they directly mentioned that. Yeah, he's gone slightly crazy because of that. He was
Wait, so
kept
cryo sleep can make you crazy if you're in too long? Isn't the queen been in there a really long time?
Yeah, if you don't have the best quality of it.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. He was
Yeah.
poor.
Yeah,
and
they explicitly mention like one character, like they who like their father and mother have been waiting for this time to resettle on Earth, and like father never lived because he had like poor quality and he just died in cryosleep. Tough luck.
And also
Yeah.
also I believe Corin had like he's so old that I believe even Diana said that she doesn't know exactly from back when Corin is, and so I guess the important thing about Corin is that I believe he's the first one to bring up who realizes that the Gundam is a Gundam, because obviously he had seen that seen fought against the Gundam, however many thousands of years ago. All right. So, okay. Do you want? So I guess we already talked about the cross-dressing. I mean, I've seen some people. By some people, I mean I've watched. I watched a podcast before this called the Weekly Suit Gundam, where they talked about Attorney Gundam, and they claimed that the fact that there's cross-dressing has something to do with gender identity or whatever, but I don't know.
Before that time, it's just it's a Japanese thing,
Yes, that is true.
Another thing which they claimed was that the fact that Laura, well, they claimed that Lauren is black. I don't know.
I mean, he's drawn like he's like that's pretty bad. Drawing like things into stuff like Lauren is drawn as like very dark skinned. I'd say like closest is like Islander, like like very Southeast Asian Islander in terms of like the way they draw him. But the thing is, like, there are no races as treated so in this show. There's
Yeah,
Well,
like
the
in
moon
this show,
people.
in this show, it's just
Yeah,
like, oh yeah,
there's the
that person's got dark skin. Oh, that person has blonde eye,
Yeah.
blonde hair. Like there
there's
isn't really this idea of ethnicity or all that shit.
there is like the idea, yes, of like moon race versus earther, but
But they're not designated by skin color.
yeah, they're not designated by skin color at all.
And exactly, and the last thing which they claimed was that um, there's a message about class, or which is not talked about, but that it's there. Did you guys feel like that it was trying to say something?
No.
No.
No,
Hmm.
no, there's nothing in particular about. I mean, I mean, I guess you could say it has like a very positive view towards like agrarianism and like the smaller working people, but at the same time, it also shows some of the hoity-toity and like the more Victorian era, like very upper class people. It shows them quite nicely. Like the Heims are very upper class. They're shown as nothing but a completely nice family, and there's no Gwen Ford's pretty nice enough. There's
Is
no
is he?
example. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, for a
You got
Machiavellian type, he's fine.
no. I really found myself feeling for Gwen Ford, to be honest, oftentimes through the show, and there's no real point where there's any like super upper class dude that abuses his authority. Like the only time where that does happen is when we eventually, very far late, you get to the moon, you get to the Gingham Fleet, and you have this like race of people who are like have been training to be warriors for the longest time for thousands of years, but haven't like been actual warriors since forever. And so like the vast majority of them are like spoiled shitheads that aren't actually that good at war, with a few exceptions.
Mm,
So
so,
we get no Char this Gundam.
There is a Shaw clone
but
with
he
Period,
yeah,
but he's mostly just like
he's more
he's
loyal
kind of
than Cha. He's more loyal.
he he yeah, he's just a badass and he's loyal to Queen Diana and he but he's also sort of like he's the type of character who is if it's in Queen Diana's interest and he independently thinks it is so, he'll betray anyone and do anything in order to do that.
Is there
Even
any
if
setup for that?
sort of like he does it
Or is he
like
just mindlessly loyal?
well, he's not mindlessly loyal. No, he's like he's part of the royal guard. His like explicit duty is defending Queen Diana.
Okay, so he's like the head of the royal guard.
Yes.
Like
Got it.
if Diana started to like wanting, I don't know, genociding the Earth people or whatever, I don't think that Harry would.
No,
Yeah.
no, he would not. He would not.
He's like the the shining example of what the loyal person is supposed to be
Yes.
in that divinity.
Yeah,
Yes, that exactly.
I I don't think I like his sunglasses though, to be honest.
Oh, I think they're kind of neat. Like, have you seen them
They're not too
move?
bad.
It's like uh, they're too huge and they make him look like a bug. Anyhow,
Yeah,
yeah,
it does sort of give that Common Rider esque ish look. Yeah.
yeah, that's that. Yeah, good. Yeah. So. I guess the class thing is, for example, an example which they gave is that um, like like Lauren, um, so she obviously likes Lauren, but Lauren just wants to be a servant, and he obviously um he
I guess if you were to say that there is a class thing, it's that the show doesn't particularly view like any one class well it acknowledges the existence of classes and isn't like necessarily against the existence of them. It does like explicitly acknowledge that like there's good people in every classes, and it doesn't really see there as being any inherent reason as to why a people of a lower class are worse or anything like that, or even like less educated or anything than people of a higher class or something like that. But there's no explicit class warfare angle or anything like that in the
Um,
show.
and I guess um, they also said that the show made kind of a feminist point or whatever with the conversation which Gwyn had
Yes.
with Lily. Um,
I don't know about any. Yeah, there's some stuff with that where Lily Borgiano is she's trying to break in. Uh, she's the daughter of the Borgiano family that rules Louisiana. Yeah, Louisiana. It's Louisiana.
That's
Yeah, there's all these little funny things where like the names have shifted, but you can tell what they originally are and what they were meant to be. It's kind of neat, and it's kind of neat world building like that.
yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of similar to Code Geass a little bit.
yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah. Uh, but that said, this show can also be long. I'd say like it gets into like the halfway point where almost in which the plot starts to move on from Deanna just moving around meeting people and having to dodge assassins. Meanwhile Kihel is trying to push off the military members who keep trying to push for open war, essentially because they say, "Hey, the militia keeps getting stronger. We need to do something." Um, or else eventually we'll be at a disadvantage here. And it's not until like halfway where Gwen Rhineford finally has this will game ship, finally gets it to like take off, and we start to have the plot advance. The militia people start moving towards actually getting towards the moon because Gwen Ford realizes, you know what? Like everyone's undercutting Deanna here. I can't negotiate directly with her. I have to go to the moon. Uh, me. Meanwhile, the moon people, uh, such basically get fed up with with Deanna and who are like completely stalling out, and she ends up they basically end up in open revolt against her. They just commit a coup d'état and imprison her.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm in awe. I'm thinking about everyone just randomly turning on the queen and capturing her.
Yeah, it's sort of this thing where like they justify it as like they feel they're technically being loyal, but they feel that Queen Diana's pushed them too far, and her like s- steadfast pseudo pacifism through everything like pushed them too far. Although at this point and it's actually at around that point where Deanna and Kihel uh, actually finally meet up with one another. Finally. And they're about to exchange roles, at which point you do have this attempted coup takeover. Kihel manages to escape, and both of them start claiming to be Deanna. And this starts to become a
Oh
lot
no,
more.
is it that scene where it's like you got to pick between the two of us?
Yeah,
Oh,
sort
I love
of.
that. Okay, well, go on.
Sort of. Like,
It's like one of my favorite tropes. I love that trope.
yeah, Kihel manages to escape, uh, and it sort of becomes an uncertain thing for a lot of the characters, where which one is Diana and which one isn't. And it sort of becomes is there really that much of a difference anymore? Because Kihel has been impersonating Diana for the past 20 episodes or so. She is very familiar with all the Moonray stuff. Not to mention, like, ideologically, she's like 1-to-1 with Queen Diana.
When they were both in the same place, so basically when the voice actress was talking to herself, did you find it hard to tell apart whether it was Diana or Kihel speaking at any moment? I found it a bit hard
I
sometimes.
used to, but I've learned basically that there's two things that they draw Diana and Kihel differently in two ways that makes it always possible to tell them apart. One, their eyes. Diana doesn't tend to have the tends to have like a very simple just dot eyes, whereas Kihel tends to have the more traditional anime eyes. Uh, Also, Queen Diana always has much paler skin, and Kihel always has a much rosier complexion. That is a constant throughout, and you can always use that to tell the two apart in the show.
Yeah, yeah. So you can at least you can tell them apart when they're both yeah, in one place. Um, do you think that I mean thematically, do you think that had any significance? Like, oh, Diana is
No.
just the same. Okay, no, okay, yeah.
No, it does have huge significance. I'd say thematically, it sort of it gets to the point where Queen Diana is almost sort of a symbol, uh, a symbol that is looked up to and revered by the Moon people. Obviously, and because she's kept so at length, uh, once Kihel is able to act with in the proper manner as befits Queen Diana, she's really able to almost perfectly impersonate uh Queen Diana. There are very, very few that are able to see through and tell whichever one it is. And it's actually a point of the show that there are many times where characters will completely guess wrong which is the correct Diana, or sometimes they'll be shrewd enough to actually figure it out for themselves. But then later on, there will be another switcheroo, and they'll get it completely wrong.
Oopsie.
Yeah, they're like twins. They're just continuously switching. It's like, oh, you thought you were dating this sister? No, you're dating the other one. And if you thought you're dating the other one, no, you're actually dating the actual sister the entire time.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not. Um, well, yeah. So that's with Diana, but also with Kihel when Dan is pretending to be Kihel. Nobody's able to say that it's a different person. Um, yeah, it's like yeah, yeah. It's like they're pretending. So basically, who they normally are is like pretense or something.
They're doing the Olsen twins.
Yeah, yeah. It's not that it's entirely a pretense, but it is that they do, yeah, somewhat put on airs because that's what their position entails. Uh, like I said, also this show is very slow, and it will sometimes devote perhaps more time to an episode than sometimes might be necessary. It has the standard Tomino thing where there has to be some sort of battle almost every episode. Um, but you'll have like
That sounds awesome because I was like, man, it sounds like there's seriously some lack of Gandams in here.
no, there's definitely battles. And speaking of battles, we haven't talked about this. These battles are far better than any Gundam TV show before this. They're often quite quick. They're often like only 3 or 4 minutes long. But instead of constant circle strafing or anything like that, you have
That's
these.
funny you say that.
Yeah, do you hate that too, Lou?
Yeah, I mean, now that you say it, it's like it just pops in my head immediately.
It's like, oh, it was just that.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of that, you will have the mobile suits will walk into and shoot at one another, and then there will be these bursts of animation, what's sometimes called sakuga, that are just really, really impressive. Mostly involving the Turn A, but sometimes other mobile suits, and it'll be like it slashing through stuff or using the this giant chain mace in a very inventive way or stuff like that. And there's been a lot of gifs done of it for of Tournay for exactly this reason. It was made in the late '90s. This was the time in which uh, animation was sort of reaching a height of its own, uh, and you can really see that in this. Like,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
only
Can
is
I?
everything nicely detailed, but you have like some really incredible animation and obviously very talented people working on this.
The
Yeah, and
soundtrack was
also like the Turn A Gundam. Can I just say like how nice it looks? Like it's a pretty decent looking mobile suit.
Yeah, some people hate it. It was actually designed by Sid Mead, the designer for Blade Runner.
I mean the head's a bit. I'm a bit like whatever, but like it does look like a samurai. Like it has like the mustache thing of the samurai. Like some.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, like it does look pretty cool. Like the helmet's a bit of a hit and miss, but like I do think it's a pretty good mobile suit. And if I remember the lore of this correctly, like either this was built by the Federation or this is like a grunt unit. Because no, I think it was no, was it the
No,
Turn X or the Turn A?
no, the Turn X was its brother. They were both built as sort of like prototypes. It's not entirely clear why they were
No, I
who
remember
built
reading
them.
somewhere that like they found either the Turn X or Turn A like floating in space like originally, right? And they decided to build it off the technology. And they came to the conclusion they're like, oh yeah, this is a grunt unit from some like far off human
Hmm.
civilization.
I don't remember that, but you could be
I read it
right.
on
It
the
could have been
wiki.
an offhand comment.
it,
It was even like I remember
Yeah,
reading on the Wikipedia, like they
yeah.
mentioned.
It could be like mentioned in some art book somewhere. Who the fuck knows?
it's kind of weird because doesn't so you're talking about the Turn A, right?
It's either the Turn A or the Turn X. Let me go fucking find it because I know it was. Here we go. Okay, so the Turn X was of extraterrestrial in origin, created by humans who migrated to another star system long ago, and the X in its name's a pro. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, that is definitely from some art book because they never mentioned that in the show.
No,
I
but
That sounds cool.
yeah. So basically,
There's even more people. There's not moon people. There's star people.
yes.
yeah,
Um,
and basically, apparently, the impression right is like the Turn X and the Turn A that's based on it. These are the grunt units. These are like your standard mobile suits, by the way.
Which is scary because these things
Yes.
destroyed civilization.
Yeah, and it makes you that's what I kind of like about like Turn A, right? Is that like yeah, you have this very like fluffy thing, but you're like, wait, where did the Turn A and the Turn X come from? Like, what the fuck is actually out there? Like, because it's like if these are grunt units, what are like the elite units like? Because like, what are these
Gundam
guys
Seed. Gundam
literally,
Seed.
literally blow up?
Nah,
Like
these
literally,
things.
one of these mobile suits nuked humanity back to the Stone Ages.
Hmm.
yeah, it doesn't tell it. Yeah,
It's like a super weapon.
yeah.
It's
But
It's
this
like
is a
if two
grunt unit.
super weapons. Yeah, yeah. It's a grunt and it's a super weapon.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of weapons, like for a while, there was a plot point of like Lauren carrying some nuclear warheads in the chest of the Tyranny, and like he was worried that they might explode at any time, um, and kill a lot of people. But in a way, he was piloting an even more dangerous super weapon without knowing it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, the moonlit butterfly is scary. And it's just like, oh, yeah, he's convinced about nukes, but no, his robot could literally, like, destroy the world and reset it again entirely.
Huh. How would it reset it?
What it has is it has
It's
this.
nanomachines. It's got nanomachines as well. It can heal
Nanomachines. Got
itself.
it. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's got nanomachines, son. The Moonlight Butterfly, it literally sends out nanomachines everywhere, and every bit of matter it comes into contact to, it just turns to sand.
Damn.
Yeah,
So yeah,
Sounds like an overpowered suit.
yeah. I mean,
It's very pretty though, and this is a grunt unit.
Grunt unit.
and I mean the funny thing is like the Tournay doesn't have like. I mean, you could say it's never used to its full potential until then, but it doesn't feel like totally overpowered or anything up
No,
until
like
then.
it does actually feel like a typical mobile suit. Like it has a typical beam rifle, has a saber or two, has a shield. It has a mace thing. Like it does feel like just a typical it does feel like a slightly more sleek and more polished version of like the original Gundam. It's like, oh, cool. This is this
Yeah,
cool stone Gundam thing. Excellent.
and then you run into Coordinator who talks about it as this white devil, and you think, oh, he just hates Gundams, and Gundams were the big issue of the past, and of course they'd hate it. And then you get later on, it's like, no, this thing is a real devil of a machine.
you can use it as a washing machine as well.
Yeah, you can use it as a washing machine. You can use it as a cow transporter.
You can use it to subvert Western civilization. It can do everything.
Yeah,
Right.
it's very
Multi-purpose and multi-use.
it's a very interesting model suit. But
Yeah, and actually, I actually think this is probably like one of the most destructive mobile suits that's actually been made in Gundam. Like just regular, excluding mobile armors, right? Like I think this is probably like the most destructive they've actually ever made in a Gundam show,
mhm.
or at least one of them.
Yeah, but to give you an idea of how stretched out this show can be, eventually they start to get to the point where Gwen takes off. There's like 5 episodes devoted to him getting uh, something like that, towards him getting the spaceship, taking off, getting it over to the mass driver point. Uh, then once they get over there, there's like 2 episodes to taking over the mass driver point, which is controlled by this ancient Mayan civilization slash Deanna counter as well. And the ancient Mayan civilization has their own internal struggle over like who's going to become the new king. Uh, there's like the old wise king versus like the younger upstart who's and there's this that becomes a whole 2 episode affair as the main characters try and like break in and open up the mass driver and get rid of all the Deanna counter particle cannon battery emplacements that are on there. Like this, I have to say that it is like this is not unique to Tomino shows. Tomino is often like this, and to be fair, it goes into a lot of detail. Like the whole arc, based upon like the whole arc just of that Mayan civilization. It could be a whole movie if you want to make it so. But it keeps doing stuff like that, like minor villains like Poe. Like there's literally a episode called Crybaby Poe, and it's basically an episode about her being like angry and kind of useless and kind of trying to make up for her failures and then getting desperate and fucking up more. Which is like what she does every episode, but this entire episode is devoted to her doing that.
Yeah,
And
like
there
I
are
was
a lot
mentioning
of
the good.
episodes like that.
I was mentioning the good student while you're away. Is that like a lot of the episodes really blend into each other?
Yes, they really do. And I have to say, it is something of a weakness of the show. Like, there's another episode, once the people of Earth get on the Will game, they get into space, and there's like a whole episode devoted to the Earth people, like, just deciding, fuck it, we're tired of this, we're space sick, let's go back to Earth. Uh, there's an
Rush,
especially fun,
yeah.
Huh.
there's an especially funny scene where the where all the militia guys get drunk and they go, we're just tired of this. You remember how when we were on Earth, we just float around in barrels and floats down river and stream? Why don't we just float ourselves down back onto Earth in a wooden barrel? This is the best idea ever.
I think they're a little intoxicated.
Well, they also
Yeah,
don't know
Lil.
jack shit about space.
That's crazy. To be so dumb and working in space would be very strange.
Yeah, and like they literally just
I
nailed.
mean, speaking of the spaceship, there was that episode where they found that ancient colony, um, which I actually quite like that episode because it gives you the idea of like there's so much they actually don't know, and you see these little nuggets of like what was once there, what once was.
Yeah,
That's really good.
And the reason why they are able to get to space, even though they are so dumb, is because they just find a spaceship.
A
Just
completely intact spaceship that works.
Yeah.
that's the Will game that was partially completed by the by Mr. Will game a couple hundred years ago, who Queen Diana knew. Um, Never completed. They're able to complete it with the help of all these moon race technicians and whatnot who want to settle on Earth. And they're like very technical oriented, so they basically don't care who they work for. So they're willing to work for Gwen Reinford. And they're able to get towards that mass driver area, which is able to shoot them into space, and then help them the way towards the moon. Kihel joins them at this point. Queen Diana ends up getting rescued from captivity by people like by some of the same people who were actually trying to assassinate her earlier, and decide, well, situation has changed. It's better if we just bring her to the moon.
Yeah, they can assassinate her en route, so it's fine.
It's fine. So we also get introduced at this point to the Gingham Fleet, Gingham. They're sort of like the samurai who have, as we said, have been trained for thousands of years to just be warriors in simulation, but they haven't had actually any battles or anything since then. There's a lot of battles actually between them off and on between the Will game as they try to get to the moon. Eventually, they manage to strike out a deal, and Gim just sort of allows it. Gim himself is like this guy he's similar to the way Tomino depicted Shiroko in Zeta, in terms of like he's very openly manipulative and will very openly like oversee personal boundaries to show that that he doesn't take gruff, but then he'll just sort of play it off like it's the most normal thing in the world. Uh, that type of character. Once they finally do get to the moon, and Queen Diana and Kihel both finally do get to the moon, they finally met a Gripper maintainer. They finally understand what this was all about. And apparently Agrippa basically had been against the the whole Earth resettlement plan for a long, long time. And the reason is pretty simple. He fears that once humans go back to Earth, they'll regain sort of what he calls their fighting spirit. And he makes mention of the fact that in a lot of ways,
Wait. So when these people that are assassinating their own kind go back to Earth, they'll regain their fighting spirit?
Yes, it
Okay,
is
sorry. Go
totally.
ahead. Continue.
Continued. Like, listen, it gets better. Like, just wait.
Well, you take over Bio Gundam. You describe
I'm
it.
sorry. This is it's
Yeah,
something.
like he's this
So-
like the guy's like this weird mix of like ultra militant, like this, like he's an interesting guy. Like he's like this weird mix of like ultra Japanese nationalist meets the samurai, and basically he talks about like restoring the
No, you're
fighting spirit
talking
and how
about Gim.
he has to like
You're
fight.
talking about Gim Gingham. I was talking about Agrippa.
Oh, Agrippa, yes, that guy. Um, so they basically like show up in his they basically show up in his throne room. They chat for a little bit, and then he's like, "I'm defeated. I'm going up and down the escalator."
Yeah, he
Huh.
basically he once Queen Diana shows up,
Basically gives up.
he kind of has to. He's definitely portrayed as a weasel. He's definitely portrayed as someone who's not really the most hardline or effective leader. It's very clear that Gim Gingham has been manipulating him and partially taking him for a ride. Gim Gingham, as Mario Gundam said, is basically a wannabe samurai, only he is like, unlike all the other wannabe samurais he's more of an actual samurai. And he's like a complete warrior. Agrippa, basically his whole raison d'etre has been that he very much fears like the apocalypses of the universal century, as he puts it, and the people of the moon have sort of become, and you see two contrasting views of this, which both have their own truth to them. Agrippa sees it as the people of the moon uh, are peaceful, and this is the way things should
They're
be.
peaceful, but they're
Uh,
assassinating their own kind. Okay.
look when they
Peaceful
don't
assassinations.
look when they don't have. But the thing is, like,
Look,
there
Lou,
hasn't.
haven't you
No,
heard of like assassinations of peace?
look, they haven't been at war in like 3,000 years. Most of their people are placid. Meanwhile, once they get,
Is out of sight, out of mind. Is
yeah,
the elite?
yeah,
As
it's
long
it's
as they're assassinating it, and I don't
Suicide.
see it.
yeah, it's very much that type of mentality. Meanwhile, once they get down to earth, there are these people who, like, they don't fight for fun, but like war's not entirely unusual for them. And he mentions like that this naturally invigorates their fighting instincts. This naturally exposes them to the fact that these people like war, and that to a certain degree, these people do enjoy war. And this is a problem. This is he views this as an existential threat to human society, and specifically the moon race
And if you're looking at it
society.
from his perspective, and the fact that like basically a single mobile suit, right, like reset everything to the Stone Age,
Yeah.
he isn't wrong, but at the same time, and we get into a really interesting philosophical question, right? Is conflict itself part of like human nature? And a lot of people would argue yes, because if you
Yeah, I
look at
would.
like Animal Kingdom and shit like that, like humans are apex predators, and what happens when two apex predators meet each other? They fight.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or they come to an understanding of sorts. But usually after like a show off, yes.
I mean, if you do a simple
Imagine this for
After a
example.
fight.
Like, say for example, me and Heracles, we encounter each other in the wild. We don't know who each other are. Like in the back of our heads, we're sizing each other up. It's like, is this a threat or is this a friend? Right?
Yes.
It could go
Yeah.
either well or it could go terribly. Or we meet each other randomly in the woods. It's like, oh, it's Heracles. Nice to meet you. Hello. Goodbye.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
another way you could think about it is, say you have, like, for instance, how do you put it? you are bored. Like you're bored out of your mind, or you're isolated from a lot of instances that happen. Say you have another person with you. Most of the time, you're prone to bring up issues, like in the simplest of cases, because
You're bored. You
that's
need
how you create.
stimulation. You need excitement.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yes,
that's like the first thing that comes to mind usually.
yes, and that's one of the things that does come up is there are a lot of the reason that, and you've seen this over and over throughout the show at this point, the militia will just start wars. The Deanna
Oh shit,
County
I'm
will just
drunk. Oh
start
fuck, I'm
battles.
bored. Oh, let's just fire random pot shots, see what happens.
And although they always have these rationalizations, a lot of it is the fact that they enjoy war. A lot of it is the fact that it is an inherently enjoyable activity.
I mean,
And
if you read like some of the shit like Greeks got up to, like say like Alexander the Great or Pyrrhus, right? I mean, to them, war isn't like yeah, war has bad aspects about it, but for them, it's just like a really extreme sport, right? Like them fighting, random champions and single duels. Like to them, it's a sport. Like
yeah,
it's just a high
Yeah.
intensity sport, and they're testing each other's metal against other opponents. Like there are people in history that war and conflict. It's a sport to them. It's like, oh yeah, I defeated your champion. Oh, he defeated me. Good show, old chap. Like
yes. And we once Agrippa is like sort of defeated, chased off, and eventually killed, and Queen Diana is fully takes over. They also get to see the dark history, which is sort of like a record of how the world blew itself up, and you get to see like the Tournai destroying civilization and shit like that. After you see that, theoretically the show could have ended there, but
but no.
Gwenline Ford, I guess you could say, show his true colors, but it's kind of understandable. He's thinking about the next conflict and thinking about how do I advantage my position, and he goes, well, most of the rest of the moon race are these pseudo pacifists, including Diana. Meanwhile, here's this Gingham guy, very effective warrior, got the most powerful mobile suits that could like destroy the world on his side. I'm going to recruit him to my side, and I'm going to basically use him to unite the American continent, and that'll put me in a better bargaining position. And he sort of like abandons half his people to go straight to Earth, but very, very tellingly,
Only half of them?
most of them, like anyone who was like not immediately on board the ship at that time, he just
Much better.
tells them to go away. It doesn't care about him, with one exception. He arranges to bring Laura over, and
The crossdresser?
Lauren, the main character,
Okay.
yeah, who he calls Laura, and he's very insistent. He's like, even though like Lauren is like also a total pacifist, and also he should really realize that Lauren is not going to go along with this ever. He tries to convince him like this will be the good for America and stuff like that. And won't you join me, Laura? And Lauren just
Join the dark
fucks
side.
fucks off and goes, "My name is Lauren Sayhawk, not Laura." And
Mm,
and sort of
powerful.
this whole thing with Gwenline Ford calling him Laura, it becomes very clear that Gwen's been doing this both partially because he's kind of feels like he wants to control Lauren and call him that and whatnot, but also because he's attracted to Lauren. He's gay.
Oh,
Yeah.
love it.
He's completely in the closet.
Love it.
And that's why he went through all this. Like he could have, the smart move would have just been to like
He
take
likes the
tourney.
femboys. He likes the
Yes,
femboys.
yes, he does. Yes, he
Oh,
does.
Man of culture. Yeah, but
Awkward
so basically he's
silence.
like, yeah, well, I'm gonna with the turn A and the turn X, I'm gonna unite all of America.
Yeah,
And Lauren's
That's
like,
just
fuck
under.
no.
Wow, that's something.
and
Yeah.
then yeah,
So so he fucks off back down to Earth. Uh, Meanwhile, so Deanna and the rest of her people come down to Earth as well, following him. He tries to unite the American continent. Basically threatens all the dukes and kings and princes uh to like surrender now and become part of his United Kingdom or basically be destroyed. And Gingham feel basically has, oh, you said be destroyed, right? And he starts torching every capital in
Wow,
the American continent.
that's all I heard.
Yeah, all because he couldn't have his peculiar buck. What a petty guy.
Wow,
Oh, Gwen Reinford, yeah.
and have his bussy.
Yeah.
that's like just malicious evil.
Well, Gwen was hoping to just use Gingham as this. It's actually a very nice point of like, we haven't talked about this, but Lily Borgiano of Louisiana is like constantly looking up to Gwen through most of the show. She's like sitting on his lap, low key flirting with him, stuff like that, like in a very Victorian manner.
Yeah, very subtle, very like little hand signs, little hand waves of the fan, little smiles, very subtle.
Love it.
And Gwen sort of returns it, but like in the end, when it comes time to leave, he just ditches her. But not Laura. So, yeah. It's an interesting example of the show, like showing like revealed preferences and that type of stuff.
yeah. I think that Lily sort of gets back at um God, I can't
Yeah,
remember.
Gwen.
Yeah.
Yeah, she talks to him again at the end, where his plans have failed. Gingham is totally running amok, doing whatever the hell he wants because he likes war. I say that's actually the weakest part about him is Gingham is both eminently likable as this very much likes war aristocrat guy, but at the same time, he doesn't seem to have much of a plan. The only plan he just lists offhand is like, well, I'll wipe the slate clean, create new civilization, something, something, and it's like,
What?
okay, that's
What?
that's little
But
Megatron tier villainy shit.
I don't
I
know.
am the dominator. Yeah. It's like, hey, let's go fill the planet with dark energon. What's the worst that can happen? What do you mean my planet's dying? Shit.
I don't know. I kind of
Damn
love
you,
those
Damn you,
villains.
Optimus Prime! How dare you?
Yeah, I get what you mean, but it's Lou, but it's like sort of like just dropped in, and he seems to be like halfway about it, and he doesn't even seem that
Halfway.
interested.
I
Like
kind of want to destroy everything.
like he's
I don't
mostly
know.
He's
Maybe
mostly
I'll
seems
blow up the planet
interested
today.
in just fighting the Tournay, his brother, and he keeps calling it the brother machine, and really enjoys fighting it. Uh, they end up having a big final battle between the Turnex and the Tournay, and it's very well animated. It's
Yeah,
very
it's
well
very
done.
cool. Like when that scene comes up, I was like, "Oh yeah, neuron brain activation. This is cool." Like the moonlight butterflies going off, and there's like sand everywhere. It's like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, there's a direct callback to the Amuro and Shaw sword fight in the end of the original Gundam, and it's very energetic. Um, they end up having like the worst sword after their mechs like fight each other to a stalemate and like sort of incapacitate each other. They end up having the best and worst sword fight in anime history.
How's it the
Where
best and worst?
Like, okay, so they both walk out of their cockpits. Gim throws.
Oh, I think you've
sword-
told me about this before. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Gim throws this sword at Lorne, and he goes like, "Have you ever fought with a sword before, boy?" "I did once." "Good." Pulls out his sword. "Let's do it!" And they
Memory's
clash swords,
broken. The
and they
truth
just
is unspoken.
and they basically start grinding their swords against one another. Like they're technically slashing at each other, but it's more like they're high stakes grinding them against each other. And this happens over the course of like 2 seconds, and like immediately one of the katanas breaks. Because
This is why
katanas are
you
shipped
folded over
swords.
10,000 times.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then like in the middle of that, the moonlight butterfly sort of reactivates and starts cocooning the mobile suits and Gim inside after Lorne is like technically beat him by grinding and breaking his sword.
Memory spoken, the truth goes unspoken. I've even forgotten my name. I don't
Wow.
know the reason or the.
Yeah, it
It's so
is
much.
sort of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they also have like this whole thing where they talk about uh doing like the actual battle in their mobile suits. They're trading jabs about like whether humans can live without conflict or not.
Well,
Uh,
if you listen to Sundown, right? Like, listen, kids are cruel, Jack. You gotta get in touch with your inner child.
I love that kind of cheesy stuff, though. I don't know. I probably would have dug it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I feel like
Oh no,
adding
it's
that,
a nice scene. It's a nice
Yeah,
scene.
it's great.
adding that blatancy to that is just what makes it so nice. Like you just get raw, like I don't even know how to describe it.
Raw
Listen,
emotion.
Lauren, you gotta get in touch with your inner child. Kids,
Yeah.
we're making the mother of all omelets.
Can't fret about every egg. Yeah. And so once that's over, that's basically the end of the show. There's this very nice extended epilogue.
Wait. Who won? Who won the fight? Who won the fight?
Like Lorne did. Lorne did.
Oh yeah, duh. The main character. Of course the villain doesn't win. Boo hoo.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like the Lorne breaks Gim's sword. Theoretically, they could keep fighting, but like just in the middle of all this, the Turn X and the Turn A start interacting with one another as they have been like throughout the whole show, and they start cocooning themselves.
So they fuck.
It's more an insect-like
That's
analogy,
silence.
but you're free to take that analogy if you choose.
No, what's happening is they're gonna merge, like in 1,000 years. The Turn A and the Turn X are gonna merge, and they're gonna come like the Turn AX or something.
That is some weird
evolve like a
technology,
Pokemon.
bro. That is some
Oh.
weird technology,
Like, no,
bro.
listen, it's nanomachine, son. Like they're just
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
merge
yeah,
and make
yeah.
an even bigger robot.
Yeah,
I forgot about the nanomachines.
it should have ended an arc ago. The story.
Yeah,
Really.
and Gim gets like trapped in that nanomachine cocoon, whereas Lorne gets out.
Oh, so someone was trapped in there? Are
Yeah,
they gonna evolve with it?
who the fuck knows? Maybe he just starves and dies. Maybe he starves and dies. Maybe he evolves with it. Who knows?
Like, oops, that it
He
seems kind
comes
of
back like 50
counterproductive to
years
have
later. He comes back 50 years later. Lauren's like an old man. He's like, "Oh, why are you so young?" He's like, "Oh, nanomachine, son."
now he is part nanomachine, like Picard and the fucking crap Picard series.
Mm.
Oh my god.
Wow.
There's so many actually good memes out of this fucking show you can make. Like, it's great.
Nanomachines.
Nanomachines.
So that's a montage at the end, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
get
nice
the
one.
montage, and you see like every
It
single
ends with a
line.
montage.
Yeah, there's this.
This is your
wonderful
favorite Gundam, bro? I don't know. I need to watch you guys bashing Wing. I need to see what you guys said about Wing.
Wing is like Okay.
Oh man, I hope you guys crapped on it. I want to watch it.
Oh, don't worry, we did.
Oh great. Okay.
Like there's good parts about Wing, but
All of
uh,
the Gundams are the same. I have the same gripes about every Gundam, but I love them all.
yeah, you will have the same gripes about like original Gundam as this. It has a lot of the same issues. In many ways, I think the reason people call this the best Gundam anime is it feels like the most refined in terms of Tomino developing his ideas and also being unique
It
and
sounds like there's a
somewhat
lot of
getting
really
over
cool.
his
There's so many
directorial
cool
issues.
concepts. So many
Oh
cool
yes,
concepts.
there are, and sort of you have to look past some of the inherent just Tomino wonky pacing
Gundamisms and
style
shit.
stuff, Gundamisms,
As in
and
like
it's like
outside.
as an outside
Oh,
observer, yeah.
oh yeah, I was just wondering as an outsider to Gundam. I tried to start it, but like, do you have to like watch the first series to watch the next series and all that?
Not
Or
no, like I think we've had this discussion before, but in general, there's one Gundam timeline, the Universal Century timeline.
Mhm.
Uh Outside of that, everything else is its own timeline, including basically this. Technically, this is in the far future of UC, but it's so far in the future there's basically no relation.
Okay.
Yeah, like that, like Char Aznavour and all those famous people that were say like a big thing, maybe in Unicorn. No, not Unicorn. Like they'll still reference in Victory. Like it's so far back that it's like they may hear about Char Aznavour if they dig up like some old relic. It's like us digging up like the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Iliad. It's like, oh, who's this Char Aznavour guy?
Yeah, I think the
Ah,
Epic of Gilgamesh is the better comparison because, like, we've kept the idea of the elite around forever. We didn't know who Gilgamesh was until like 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, like basically, sometime in the future, and Turn A Gundam, they may dig up some old computer that mentions the epic of Char Aznavour and Omino Ray,
Maybe.
and it
ah.
talks about them
The,
piloting giant robots and them slaying a demon, and
the
slaying a demon.
the old Gundams link together, and the newer Gundams are kind of like the Final Fantasy series.
Ah. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, and even with the old Gundams, I'd say like each one sets itself up in such a manner that honestly you could jump into any one of them
Yeah,
if you really wanted.
yeah.
They do a decent job.
They usually have like some Char clone, which is this character in the original series, and there's other things that are very similar between them, kind of like Final Fantasy.
Ah. All
Yeah,
right.
there's sort of like recurring patterns throughout. Yeah. This was sort of like this was the last time Yoshiyuki Tomino, the original director, directed a Gundam show with all his like special peculiarities in terms of like the way he does things. Like he's
Mhm.
very good at, and Tone is one of the best examples of this. Like every single character is developed. Like every single one has like a little something peculiarity and like uniqueness to them and will go through like their own tiny mini arcs. But at the same time, no one of them is necessarily more important than the other. So like the main character can get just about as much development as these side characters. And
You had a lot
it
of episodes back then. You got so many episodes back then.
yeah, you have so many episodes, you're going to like and it really spreads itself out over like this entire large cast and it tries to paint and like at its best, although it can be long and admittedly kind of boring, Tornay can really paint this sort of like wide tapestry of like all of human civilization almost, and you can see like all the different peoples, and even people like even characters that are like portrayed as outright villainous or problem or having issues causing problems like this Lieutenant Phil or or the various militia guys, uh there's never a character assassination or anything like that, even though the director like clearly isn't like not the most fond of those types of people. Like he portrays them 100% realistically. Like they
I'm guessing
never.
it's also. Do they also make it so it's like the characters, how do they have like there's like a reasoning behind what they do, like like they don't personally see what they're doing as evil. They kind of just have this perception as
Yeah, they just have this perspective of like this is absolutely what's necessary to do. We're
Villains
losing
with
our position
motivation.
here. Yeah,
I
there's
like.
never. Yeah, Tomino never writes villains without motivations. They always have something behind them.
Yeah.
It sounds like this guy, what he had behind him was he wanted to destroy everything, kind of.
Well, yeah, except yeah, the other issue is like a lot of Tomino shows are like backloaded. He doesn't seem to do
Yeah, like if
really.
you ever see like Gazi's wings or brain powered, like you'll definitely see what we mean.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of stuff in the. It's a big amalgamation soup.
yeah, it's a big amalgamation soup. He's not very good at optimizing his time, so inevitably, like half the plot revelations end up having happening in the last third to quarter of the show, and it becomes a bit of an issue. The other weird thing, and this is a very weird thing about Tone that I noticed at the end, it just the technical problem that that was starting at at episode 1 of like the moon people trying to resettle, it's not resolved like at all.
Nope.
Every character goes their separate ways, and theoretically you've got slightly better people in charge at this point, and you do have like a framework for America as they call it, to start to become united, but there's
And
nothing
so did the
concrete.
moon. Did the moon end up getting involved in Earth's politics? Like, did the transfer of the moon people? I assume no.
Somewhat. Like once Gwen Ford started taking over everything, the remaining Earth, the American kingdoms all allied with Queen Diana, in order to fight back against Gwen Ford and the Gingham forces. Uh,
So the moon people allied with Earth to fight a like rebel force.
okay, uh, okay. Status quo before Return to Earth. Status quo before Return to Earth was the the insubordinate Deanta counterforces versus various militia forces of the various Earth kingdoms. Once they return to Earth, Gwen Rhineford takes control of a very tiny part of the militia, plus the Gingham forces that he recruited, and he starts to conquer all of America.
He's
Queen
like
Diana,
like a rogue state kind of thing.
yeah, sorta. Well, he doesn't see himself that way, but yeah.
What does
And
he see himself as the emperor?
no, he sees himself as he
Doing
wants
the
to
right
unite.
thing.
Yeah, he wants to unite America, and he wants these guys to give in willingly. He doesn't want them to like fight or anything. Just agree to my terms. You'll become like my dukes or whatever, and we'll figure out a new system. Let's just do this.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like my
Uh,
kind of guy.
yeah, yeah. But they go like, yeah, no. So they end up. So Queen Diana comes down. She takes over the Deanna counter forces, who, based off of like the new situation, end up repledging their fealty towards Diana. And they ally with all the remaining Earth kingdoms, and so they have a grand alliance, and they take down the Gingham
Okay.
forces. Gwen basically is completely his reputation is basically completely ruined in America, and he literally sails off to become a pirate or who knows
It
where.
sounds to me whatever treaty that the moon people got into with America or the planet Earth would not have been in their favor.
Yeah, it was like a temporary alliance type deal. So it doesn't really, while there's more trust there, it doesn't really resolve the whole issue of the moon race people trying to return to Earth.
Yeah,
It's just
just
sort of,
maybe we get some refugees going there or something, immigration.
yeah, it's just sort of glossed over maybe.
Yeah, and
It reminds me of a quote actually from like Gundam 00, where one of the main characters in that insults the main peace princess in that show by saying, "And as those politicians talk, more people die." And that's actually like a legitimate point of like what happens in Turn A lot. Like the peace negotiations are very low on specifics, and it tends to just valorize the people that want them. But they oftentimes don't necessarily lead anywhere, and it's not entirely clear uh, what the
Yeah,
compromise is.
they probably don't dive into that specific detail, I'm sure.
Yeah,
what we do know though is that all the people on the moon who were in hibernation, um, or not all of them, I think, everyone who has a who there is
yeah.
work for.
They wake up. They're
Yeah.
probably going to start resettling. Queen Diana and Kihel actually make their final trade-off. Diana was getting like very tired of of her responsibilities as queen, and she starting to feel like she'd made all these mistakes and whatnot. And she basically leaves to live a quiet life alongside Lauren.
The weight
Uh,
of death weighing upon her shoulders.
yeah, there was actually a nice romance that was built up between Lauren and Deanna in like the mid-teens to 20 episodes. That's actually one of the other ways you can tell the difference is Kihel was basically just formal and nice enough with around Lauren. Uh, Deanna openly enjoys Lauren's company and starts to become a little flirtatious, and the two start to get kind of close. So they basically become. But again, this sort of shows how the show can be like a little schizophrenic at times. Like, there's this scene, episode 25, where Queen Diana leaves Lorne for a little bit. Lorne, like, clenches his chest and goes, like, now I'm all alone. And you can really feel for him. And then there's, like, no particular scene where Lorne and Diana get to be, like, completely one-on-one with one another until, like, the
Maybe
end montage.
it happened off screen of the 50 episodes, you know.
Yeah, I guess. It's like all the build-up's there, but like the
Yeah.
payoff just sort of happens at
It's
the end.
probably just like the natural, cliche ending kind of thing.
Yeah. Certainly like that.
All right then, ratings.
I'll give this a heavy 7 to light 8 out of 10. It's a fairly solid Gundam show.
Yeah, I have to give it that. Rewatching it, I was actually there's a lot in here that's like very, very unique, and I do like. And if you do approach it like a slice of life show, like just put on an episode every so often, it can actually be really quite enjoyable.
I hate slice of life.
But at the same time, there are a lot of these pacing issues or weird directorial things uh here and there, and it's like even if the writing is in some ways is top notch, I do have to
It sounded
give it
really cool in
thumbs up.
some parts, dude. It sounded really awesome, and like
Oh
there's a lot
yeah,
of really good concepts there.
oh yeah,
And the
and
fights sounded awesome.
yeah, sort of the neat thing about Tomino is I know he's done series after this, and basically each series has been like building off of the last one in terms of his conceptual sci-fi ideas. So I know Overman King Gainer is a lot about this, as well as G Reco. A lot of ideas about like how does humanity actually structure itself so that it could like live with itself, not constantly have this cycle of civilizations where it destroys itself. Uh, be able to have the fighting instinct and hone it, but not let it run amok, stuff like that. He's very into that sort of hard sci-fi bent of things now, which I think is kind of neat. But yeah, I'd probably give Turn A, yeah, at the end of the day, a 7 out of 10.
I'd say
7.
yeah. I'm giving it a lower 8 out of 10.
A lower 8? He said 7. 8 is lower than 7?
No, that is to say somewhere less than 8.5 or 8.2, something like that.
Got it.
Yes, 8.03145.
Yeah. So okay, let's see what else to talk about. Yeah, best girl. Who is best girl by Gundam?
I'll go with the farmer. No, what's the name of the black-haired lady, like the one of the fan?
Who are you talking about?
Lily.
Oh, Lily Borgiano? Yeah. Oh, she's cute.
Yeah, I'll say she's best girl because everything, like all the episodes blend in for me. So
No, she is a really cute character, but for me, Queen Diana's like the easy fucking choice. She's like very sweet, very romantic with Lauren. Like, honestly, she is absolutely ideal waifu material in focus on the waifu part of that. Like, she is like the ideal wife for like any person.
Is she like trad wife?
Yes, she's complete trad wife.
Got it.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think I'll go with Lily Borgiano as well. Yeah. Nothing else to add, I think. So let's end the show.
Yep.
I'm good.